Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I'm here. I'm your host. My name is Nick Walsh. And the other person who's here, who's your co host, I guess I should call myself a co host as well. I don't know. Anyway, Vinny Gonzalez is here. What's going on, dude?
What's up, Walsh? You can definitely call me co-host. You're definitely a step above me in hosting duties.
I don't know. I think I'm probably co host too. Because can one person be a host if there's two hosts? I feel like we're both co hosts, right?
I guess when you look at it like that, but yeah, sure.
All right. Anyway, I'm probably gonna call myself the host again next time and then make the same mistake. But anyway, Vinny, we are here tonight. We are here to recap Week 3 of the NFL season. We're gonna do that in our usual fashion by going through some injuries, some news, talking about some of the stuff that happened this week and how it's going to affect you going forward. This one might be a little bit shorter than usual. But we're going to try and get you guys a whole bunch of good information here. First, though, the Let's Talk Fantasy Football podcast is sponsored by No Halftime. The No Halftime app isn't your typical fantasy sports service. You get to create one-on-one fantasy matchups, and you can use the code LTFF for a free sign-up bonus. So with that being said, Vinny, we've got a lot of stuff to go to. We also have the Thursday night preview, Dolphins-Bengals. You pumped for that one?
I'm very excited. I love whenever the Bengals are on primetime, even though they usually lose, but I like to watch them a lot.
I was going to say primetime Andy is like not a good thing most of the time, right?
No, it's usually a bummer, but I do just enjoy watching them. So regardless, I'll have a good time.
All right, fair enough. Let's get right into the injuries from this week. One of the big ones was Shane Vereen, who, on Sunday morning with the news that Rashad Jennings was out, became a very, very good value start and someone who wasn't even necessarily owned in a lot of leagues. So Shane Vereen, went in there, played well, got a touchdown early, actually got benched after fumbling, and now it comes out later. It may not be the fumble that got him benched. He has a triceps injury and is going on the IR. Now, Jennings should be back very soon, but we're not really sure because we thought he was going to be back week 3. What does this mean for the Giants' run game, your perception of Rashad Jennings, and then any other guys in that backfield?
Jennings could be losing value pretty quickly, so that kind of sucks if you were someone that did zero RB and took him late, but I'm sure you have some kind of other option. But the guys to pick up are Darkwa or Perkins. And I saw that Ben McAdoo said they're all in on Paul Perkins today, so that'll be interesting to see if he gets some work over Darkwa. And also Bobby Rainey is still there, and he actually got some looks during the game where Vereen was still active. So it'll be interesting, and I think probably the best value pickup is probably Perkins, just because of his talent level and opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean, Perkins is certainly the biggest unknown in that backfield. We've seen, glimpses of Darkwa. He actually ran pretty well this week after Vereen left the game. We've seen Bobby Rainey be efficient in the past before, be a solid running back. I'm skeptical on just Giants running backs in general. I don't know if I'm going to go out of my way to do this unless I had someone get injured. Like, for example, I had Vereen, then maybe that's someone, but I'm not dropping like any of these guys I picked up last week, like a Dwayne Washington, a Matt Asiata, a Jerick McKinnon, maybe a Fozzie Whitaker I would drop for one of these guys, but don't go out of your way.
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
All right. Sammy Watkins was out this past week, still dealing with that foot injury, not really guaranteed when he's going to play again. Robert Woods I think got 8 targets in his absence, which is, whatever. I don't know if it really means anything going forward. But what do we do with this Sammy Watkins situation? Is there any clarity? I don't know. Like, if you own Sammy Watkins, what are your options here?
I think you're safe to bench him. Like the game where he was active against the Jets, he didn't do shit. And this game, they just sat him. I kind of hope they just sit him until he feels more comfortable at least. That'll make your decision a lot easier. So obviously, Rex Ryan coaching a team is not providing the best clarity to someone's injury status, but you're going to have to monitor Watkins a lot. And he's going to be hard for I don't trust him at all. So it's going to be hard to throw him in your lineup.
Do you think you could get any sort of trade value for him?
No, I think a lot of people would laugh at you trying to trade Sammy Watkins right now. You have zero leverage, so you're kind of just stuck with him at this point. It's one of those unfortunate things that happens.
Okay, fair enough. Des Bryant left the game this past weekend for a little bit. He did get a touchdown earlier on that kind of, made it okay. He then came back and finished the game after his knee injury. An MRI. Vinny, do you have any news about this, or what should we be looking for going forward regarding Des?
Just check and see if he's scheduled to get an MRI, if they're even going to do it, because it's already Tuesday and they still have not even done it. So I guess it's not concerning to Dez to get that checked out, but I think you're rolling Dez out regardless. He finished the game strong, caught a touchdown after coming back, so I'm safe with Dez.
Fair enough. Russell Wilson of the Seahawks, he has a sprained ankle we put here. He was also getting fit for a knee brace on the sideline during the game. So people were speculating that there may be a little bit of an MCL issue involved as well. This is something since week one we've been dealing with this. He's not ruled out or anything. But if you're a Russell Wilson owner, are you trusting him going forward knowing that he's so reliant on his mobility to make plays?
No, you don't trust him. You work that you keep Russell Wilson, but you continue to work the waiver and just make spot plays until he's somewhat healthy. You might have to eat a bad week if he goes off, but I think it's safe to say you can sit him. I don't think he's had a game over 15 points this year, so he's a safe sit for now.
Okay. I agree with you that you're working the waiver wire. I'm a little reckless with my quarterbacks and might be willing to just drop him because even when he comes back, I mean, like Russell Wilson is great, but there's no guarantee that I don't know. I'm always on the side of a little too reckless with willing to drop quarterbacks. But I think I'd be willing to drop him.
What if you took him like in the 5th or 6th round of your draft?
I mean,
is that irrelevant at this point?
I think it's irrelevant. The fact, where I drafted him doesn't have any sort of bearing on how well he's going to do for the rest of the year. I understand why it's something that you would consider. You don't want to give up on a 5th or 6th round draft pick this early in the year. But I mean, when you're really looking at it logically, it shouldn't affect your decision making going forward, I don't think.
Yeah, good point.
Staying with the Seahawks, Thomas Rawls wasn't inactive on Sunday. Now they're saying he has a hairline fracture in his fibula and is out for 3 to 4 more weeks. I think it's safe to say they rushed him back. It doesn't seem like he was really ready to come back when he did. And it seems like they're paying for it now, but someone who's not paying for it, someone who's really benefiting for it and maybe making a career out of himself is Christine Michael. What a game. Comes out 2 touchdowns, 20 carries, 106 yards against the Niners. If you're a Rawls owner, what are you doing with him? And then, if you're a Michaels owner, what do you think going forward there?
I think Michaels, you continue to roll out week in, week out. We saw Pete Carroll actually hold up his promise of giving him 20 carries, and that's exactly what he got this past week. And he made good on it, man. 2 touchdowns, fantastic outing. So yeah, I'm rolling out Michael. They don't have the greatest matchups coming up. They have the Jets this week, Falcons, Cardinals, Saints, Bills. So a little bit of a mixed bag there for a good rushing outing, but I think you can't pass up that workload that he's getting.
Yeah, absolutely. It is worth noting that CJ Prosise was also inactive this week. Prosise is likely going to be their passing down back when he returns. So, I mean, Michael will be off the field a little bit more once Prosise comes back, but I believe he only got 3 targets, caught 2 of them this past week. So it's not like your sack production there. With Christine Michael, you're really looking at him as that ground and pound type guy on a team that's likely playing from ahead in the Seahawks. Jeremy Langford of the Bears sprained his ankle, a high ankle sprain, so he is out 4 to 6 weeks. That is the severe type of ankle sprain, I suppose. Jordan Howard came in and looked pretty decent, I would say, by all estimations in his absence. But there's also Kadeem Carey there, who's been out since week 2. We don't really know what his situation is going forward. And then they signed Joique Bell. how are you reading this situation? If Howard isn't owned, are you picking him up? Is Bell affecting your, there's a lot of different factors in here, and I'm just interested on your take on the whole situation, really.
So Langford was eating up a lot of carries in the offense as it was, and they gave him his fair shot. So I think what they're going to do is give Jordan Howard his fair shot if he's the next man up, because I know Kadeem Carey is dealing with hamstring injuries. So until he comes back, I'm sure if Kadeem Carey came back this week, he'd be in the mix. So keep an eye on how Carey's dealing with that injury. But I think Howard's going to get his fair shot. The Joik Bell signing is fucking whatever. So I think Jordan Howard is definitely high up on your waiver wire priority.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's probably the number one running back on your waiver wire, unless someone like Michael is there. Let's talk about it. So we talked about those Giants guys before. Is Jordan Howard ahead of them for you? Any of the Giants?
Yeah, I think so. Just because there's way less clarity with the Giants, I think, especially with Jennings probably being active this week. So it'll be more of a clouded situation than I think the Bears, which is also a clouded situation. Don't get me wrong, but I think Howard is definitely ahead of most of those guys like Darquan Perkins and as far as getting their opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's guys on your waiver wire that should have been picked up last week, Jordan Howard is probably the number one running back waiver wire priority. Don't worry about Joik Bell. If he's anything more than a back who comes in just to spell him for a couple snaps a game.
Yeah.
Eli Rogers has turf toe. He's likely to miss week 4 and potentially beyond that. Eli Rogers wasn't really too fantasy relevant so far this year. Does this do anything in terms of you liking other guys on the team more, or is it just sort of off your radar completely?
I would say off my radar.
Okay, that's very fair. I'm going to try and read into it too much and say it's going to upgrade Jesse James or something stupid like that. It's probably not going to.
That's actually something I didn't think about, and that's actually a good point.
I mean, just over the middle passing, I guess who else is going to do it? Next man up, you would think would be Sammy Coates. He's not really meant for slot roles. So maybe they kick Wheaton in. Maybe they kick Brown in for some more snaps than usual, which would probably be nice because it would get Brown off some of those elite outside corners. Too much about Eli Rogers. Let's talk about Mohamed Sanu. He has a shoulder injury, but he's day-to-day. He's expected to be fine. We're going to talk about Julio a little bit later on, but if Mohamed Sanu is out, does that affect the Falcons for you at all, or anything like that?
I don't think so, especially since they think he's going to be out there probably this week. So I wouldn't look too much into it.
Yeah, monitor it. Don't really read too much into it right now. All right, Vinny, that's going to do it for our injury news. We're going to move into some of the interesting things that happened this week. At least we think they're interesting. And I said we're going to talk about Julio later. I was wrong. We're going to talk about him right now.
Nice.
And the reason we're going to do that is because there's a couple elite wide receivers, namely Julio and Odell, who there are rumblings that, these guys are kind of underperforming, that they're not living up to your expectations as potentially the second and third draft pick off the board, and almost definitely the second and third wide receivers off the board. So what do you do with these guys? Is it something where you're a little bit concerned, or are you sort of just okay and you're going to try and hope they come out of this rut? Are you going to try and shop them? I don't know. There's a lot of different things you can do here.
I don't think I would ever try and shop Julio and Odell, especially after going probably second or third pick for them. I don't think I can live with myself, especially if I gave away them for like probably half the value that they're worth, and then getting like 2 okay guys that you can start every week. Like these guys are still studs, and I think I'm just continuing to roll them out. They can't not be this ineffective all season long. It's impossible.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think with Julio, there's a little bit of a concern. I think with Odell, there's no concern whatsoever. Odell Beckham Jr. is still getting 27% of the targets. I'm sorry, 28% of the targets on the Giants through the first 3 weeks. The touchdowns have gone more to Shepard and Cruz than him, but this is a guy who can catch touchdowns. He's going to catch touchdowns. And in week 2, he dropped a touchdown, a long touchdown pass, where, you know, if is that ball 48 out of 50 times, you know, and if he catches that, there's a completely different narrative on his season. So Odell, I think, you know, completely fine. Keep rolling him out, no problem. Julio Jones is a little more concerning to me. He only has a 19.6% target share so far this season, 2 red zone targets, and they both came this week. Is it possible that he's in like a 2015 AJ Green situation where the offense is just sort of better overall and Matt Ryan doesn't need to force feed it to him as much?
There is a little legitimate chance that could be the case, but I think he's a little banged up, and I think we saw that reach the climax this week when he was pretty much a full-on decoy. If you remember in the preseason, Julio Jones left the game with that knee injury, and I think he banged up his foot again in week 1. So I don't think he's been right all season, and I'm willing to just hold on to him and hope that it's that. But that would suck if it was the AJ Green situation, big time, because AJ Green had a very decent season, definitely not like superstar fantasy-wise, though. So that would be concerning.
Right. That's the thing is like Julio Jones is going to have a decent season no matter what, but you drafted him to have a superstar season. I think there's a narrative here where potentially, and you know, I'm not huge into narratives, but I'm going to throw this one out here. So there's a narrative here where I think his target share increases heavily over the next couple of weeks due to his schedule. And the reason I say that is so far they've faced Tampa Bay, Oakland, and New Orleans, none of which have good passing Ds. So it could be just that at this point, Matt Ryan doesn't have to force it to Julio because, you know, he drops back and all of a sudden Jacob Tamme is 15 yards down the field with no one around him. And he's like, oh, okay, this is fine. You know, drops back the next time and Devontae Freeman's just sitting down in the middle of the zone, nine yards down the field. Like, cool, this works out. The next 3 games they face Carolina, Denver, and Seattle. So those are much more difficult defenses. All 3, you know, top 10, potentially top 5 defenses in the NFL. I think there's a good chance that maybe these defenses are a little bit tighter. You know, they're a little bit better. And these, I don't want to say mediocre players, because Jacob Tamme is, you know, has had a very good career, but like Jacob Tamme is old and is past his prime. Like, it's going to be harder for Jacob Tamme to get open against these elite defenses than it was against these bad passing defenses. So with that being said, I think it's possible that Ryan kind of looks to Julio, you know, drops back, doesn't see anyone open, and is sort of like, well, time to throw it up to Julio and hope he catches it, which could lead to, you know, sort of a reversal of fortunes. Not that anyone really should, but if you can buy low on either of those guys, I would definitely do it.
Wow, that's a crazy ass narrative. That was not what I was expecting. The better the defense, the better the play Julio is.
Well, it is sort of, I don't know. I think I'm stretching on that one pretty hard.
Maybe a tad, but it's very interesting.
I mean, I think it intuitively like kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know you didn't want to call them mediocre, but like Sanu, Tamme, Justin Hardy, like whatever. So it's a fair point.
Okay, fair enough. I guess yeah, that's helpful to know that I'm not completely crazy on that one. Terrell Pryor, geez, man. Terrell Pryor this past week, 3 of 5 passing for 36 yards, 4 carries for 21 yards and a touchdown, and then 8 catches for 144 yards on 14 targets. I don't know if there's ever been a stat line like that in the history of the NFL. And, you know, my knowledge doesn't go back too far of the NFL, you know, in terms of, you know, going back to when, you know, back to like the 80s and 70s or like whatever else, but give anyone who's ever done that in a week.
Cordell Stewart, probably.
Wait, no, maybe. I don't know. Anyway.
I mean, it was still like this dude is such an athlete. It's insane. He just went off.
Yeah, so
he played a snap at safety too. He did everything.
Yes, I saw that. It's just like
crazy.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's just, well, let's let Terrell Pryor be the whole team. And really, I give a lot of credit to Hugh Jackson for it. for, kind of having the balls to do that kind of thing. Because I feel like a lot of coaches won't, but or wouldn't, but they kind of realized they weren't going to, go out there and compete by lining up and saying our guys are better than your guys because their guys aren't. So that being said, while Cody Kessler is the quarterback, is this something that we can expect from Pryor?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. Throw him in, throw Pryor in a quarterback and just kind of run the wildcat, let him pass it, let him do whatever. But as far as the targets and catches and all that go, I could see that possibly going down with Gordon coming back soon. So that's something to watch out for. But Pryor could wind up being a very sneaky flex play week in and week out, as long as the quarterback situation is what it is for the foreseeable future. Because I know McCown's not due back for a couple weeks, right? At least four more.
Yeah, Kessler's going to be in there for a while, and you would think they're going to do kind of their wacky Pryor stuff for the entirety of the time that Kessler is there.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I think Pryor, like, if he's not owned in your league, he has to be owned, no matter what. And I was talking to you about this before the podcast a little bit, but he was sort of a regression candidate based on, the amount of targets, the amount of passes that he was getting in the first couple of weeks relative to his actual performance. And I sort of wrote it off as, well, he's not going to regress, positively regress, because it's Cody Kessler in there. So like, it's still just going to be inefficient. It's not going to work. 32% of the Browns targets this year. I just talked about ODB having 28%. Julio had 19.6%. Terrell Pryor has 32% of those targets. The Browns are going to be down a lot. They're going to have to pass a lot. I think teams are going to be more prepared than the Dolphins were. I think the Dolphins had no idea that like the Browns were going to use Pryor like this. So teams will certainly look at the film and be like, well, when we see this, maybe it's Pryor doing something weird. So they'll be able to scheme a little bit, but like Pryor's got to be owned, potentially got to be played going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I'm kind of upset because I took him as my like last round flyer in almost every league, and I dropped him this week. So, of course.
Well, yeah, that's how fantasy goes, I guess.
Sucks.
Yeah. Speaking of wide receivers doing crazy things, Marvin Jones had 6 catches for 205 yards and 2 touchdowns on 8 targets this week. On a scale from 1 to legit, how legit is Marvin Jones?
Oh, he's legit as fuck. Marvin Jones is really good. I know you said he was PPR wide receiver 1, and I just got really upset because the Bengals were looking for a number 2 wide receiver forever, and Marvin Jones was just fucking sitting there the whole time. Like he had his games, but it was by no means a 1 and 2 kind of relationship there the whole time he was in Cincinnati. So he's coming out and he has been destroying people. And I know his draft stock went up closer to like around late August, but you got what you paid for, and it's definitely returning its value.
It should have been way higher.
Yeah,
he should have been like a 3rd round pick.
Yep. Like, what did you say? Was it this weekend? You're like, I would take Marvin Jones probably like 3rd round or something like that. I forget what the situation was.
I forget exactly. Oh no, we were comparing him to like
over Cobb or something like that.
I think it was Lacey. I think someone may have emailed us with a question about trading. I don't remember what it was, but I think what I said was like I would draft Marvin Jones ahead of Eddie Lacy, like 100%. Like if the draft was today,
yeah, exactly.
It's like that's like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And I think it's a no-brainer to start Marvin Jones every single week. Another one where I'm upset that I moved off of him this week because I was like, oh, the wind speeds are going to be high. Maybe that's going to be a Golden Tate game. Nope, you're wrong.
That made me
the whole week.
That also made me change my kicker too.
Oh God, dude! The whole week I was like, Marvin Jones is the best wide receiver play of the week. I'm going to play him everywhere, and then I moved off of him, and it was just so frustrating. But what can you do? Marvin Jones is a legitimate wide receiver 1 at this point, and you should be starting him every week, no matter what.
Yep.
Vinny, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. No halftime. What time are we at?
We're looking at 25 minutes.
Oh, all right. This will be fine then.
Yeah.
All right. All right, and we're back. That was our sponsor, No Halftime. Make sure you guys get on there, use that promo code LTFF, sign up and play some games. They're a lot of fun. Let's get right back into the interesting things that happened this week. We saw Jeremy Hill get 17 carries for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns. My question is it was against Denver. You wouldn't expect that against Denver. Is there any way to predict Gio and Jeremy Hill moving forward?
Dude, I thought so, but there is absolutely zero way to predict it. It's just going to be determined in because Hill always gets the start, so it's going to be determined in just his first couple carries in probably the first, second, and third series, and then it's just going to change from there. So it sucks because if Hill gets rolling, they're going to keep giving him the ball. If he doesn't, they're going to go to Gio in the passing game. So there is zero way to predict it, and these guys are just rough flex plays that could work out for you, but totally fuck you at the same time every week, unless one of them gets injured. There's really no way to predict it.
Yeah. Am I wrong in saying Jeremy Hill is the most touchdown dependent player in fantasy?
Nope, you are dead on with that. He absolutely is, because if he doesn't capitalize on like any of the first carries he gets, he's not going to see much work the entire game. So he's got to fall into the end zone or, pick his shit up, and it sucks.
Yeah, it's worth noting too that Jeremy Hill, he had a 50-yard touchdown run on the first drive of this game, which is sort of what you were alluding to there, where right away, and all of a sudden Jeremy Hill was a great play this week. After that, he averaged 2.9 yards per carry on his carries. Not great. He got one more goal line look. He got in the end zone on it. That was the big day. Gio, actually, if you had played him, wasn't the worst flex start either. I think in full point PPR, he would have had something like 9 to 10 points. Yeah. So, I mean, whatever there, I guess.
Well,
I said the same thing, where I was like, no way to predict them. And then I found myself looking at the Miami-Cincinnati matchup and was like, this is a Jeremy Hill game. It's like, no, you're trying to predict him, you stupid idiot.
Exactly. You think, we said last week, Broncos game, definitely a Gio game, because they're going to have to pass around that fucking awesome front, and Hill just went off. And like we said at the beginning of the season, when we were trying to figure out who's going to have the better season, Jeremy Hill or Gio, and we were looking at Hill's stats, and he gets what's blocked for him. And if you look at that huge run he hit off in the first quarter, it was blocked perfectly. And he didn't even make a cut. He just went straight. And it was, that's it. And it just went right through the hole. It was a 50, 60-yard gain, and they just kind of rode him no matter what. Because you said his horrible average, which is 2.6, which pretty much happened last year too. Hill was just not good, and he's ineffective. He really can't make his own yards. He has to get what's blocked for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the Redskins, Jordan Reed was a guy who was drafted very, very high. It's sort of been disappointing so far. Are you concerned about Jordan Reed if you owned him, or if you drafted him rather?
I'm a little concerned, especially when Jamison Crowder is leading the Redskins in red zone targets. With a dude like Jordan Reed, you don't give it to a skinny slot dude in the red zone. So I think the Redskins still have some shit to figure out in that regard. But once they get their red zone opportunities figured out, I think Jordan Reed is going to see a big uptick in value. So if you can buy low on Jordan Reed, I think he's one of my buy lows.
I agree. I think those red zone opportunities are going to sort of, come his way eventually. And we said Jordan Reed would be a great draft pick because we assumed he was going to be the number one option in that offense, no matter what. The target distribution has been really flat, though. He has a 20.4% target share, same exact as Jamison Crowder. They're tied for the lead, both 20.4%. And then Deshaun Jackson at 18.8, 16%. This is a lot of guys all getting around the same amount of targets each week. So it's difficult to really separate yourself unless the offense is very, very efficient. Right now, they're sort of like the Saints offense, but without the wild efficiency that's creating, all this production for everyone.
Yeah.
It's a little concerning in that sense, but the red zone targets should pick up for him.
And they're definitely talented enough to get it back on track and be more efficient. So I'm gonna definitely hold strong on them.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's see. What else did we have here? Allen Robinson. This is something I think we both talked about, where this week he had 7 catches on 11 targets, only 57 yards, but 2 touchdowns. He's going to keep seeing these targets. Don't worry about Allen Robinson. They play the Colts this week. You'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Love Allen Robinson. Again, if you can buy low on him, definitely do it. I mean, this after his 2 touchdown week, it might be a little hard, but I say try and get Allen Robinson, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think this past week was probably the week to get him. But if you can still, definitely go after it. The Packers offense. Aaron Rodgers threw 4 touchdowns. They only had to throw the ball 24 times. Aaron Rodgers had all 4 of those touchdowns in the first half. 2 of them went to Jordy. A little bit more than 25% of the targets went to Jordy. Outside of Jordy and Rodgers, though, how good are you feeling about anyone here?
Not good at all, like at all. And it really sucks for Cobb owners. We were big on him in the offseason just because we thought he was going to get a larger target share. With Jordy coming back, there takes off the pressure. And it just has not worked in the slightest. And he hasn't seen nearly enough looks to even be productive. And I think we were talking before the podcast. It's full on panic time for Randall Cobb owners.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, like, if you have other options, I think you should be using them instead of Cobb. He's certainly not a guy that you need to be starting each week. I do think there's room for that to
Correct itself.
for it to, yeah, because when you look at sort of their situation so far, week 1 they didn't throw that many passes. Week 2 they played the Vikings. Week 3 they didn't throw that many passes. Like, there's going to be some games where it's an actual shootout rather than the Packers get way up and then the Lions fight their way all the way back. In those games, you would think Cobb would have to get 7 targets, 8 targets, that sort of thing. And with 7 or 8 targets from Aaron Rodgers, you're likely going to have a good game. So it's. I think we need to look for those games where there's going to be significant passing volume, and those are the ones where really you should be looking towards playing Cobb.
See, the problem is, like, this game was supposed to be like that kind of shootout. So, I mean, it's still week 3, so I'm sure a lot of people are playing Cobb, but this was kind of supposed to be more back and forth, I think.
I don't know. I mean, it was a 7-point spread. That's pretty significant.
Yeah. I mean, they just came out and wrecked, like, the Lions real early, but they were still able to mount a comeback because the Packers stopped passing the ball like at halftime. So it's very odd, but we saw the Packers offense correct itself as a whole. So I think there's reason for optimism.
Yeah, I think there's reason for optimism, but definitely don't feel like you need to start Randall Cobb every week.
Right.
Is he a buy low for you, or is he just kind of like a hold?
He's a hold. I wouldn't go out and try and ask somebody for him, and I wouldn't try and sell him necessarily.
All right, fair enough. This is sort of like a philosophical one too, but what do you do with D'Angelo Williams? He was very disappointing this past week. The Steelers went down huge to the Eagles, who, by the way, appear to be legit, both on offense and defense, which may be the surprise of the season, honestly. But D'Angelo, because Bell's coming back, and let's break this into 2 categories. If you have Bell, what are you doing with D'Angelo? And if you don't have Bell, but you have D'Angelo, what's your strategy going forward?
If I have Bell and D'Angelo, I am holding on to it. Is that like the way you're phrasing it? Like if you own both of them?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you own both.
Absolutely hold on to D'Angelo, because if anything happens to Bell again, you have him in your back pocket, and he is going to be good again with Bell out of the picture. If he gets hurt, God forbid, at least you have that safety net to like lean back on, and he'll be a top 10 option for you at running back. If you don't have Bell and you have D'Angelo, I would try and sell him to the Bell owner, mainly because I don't buy the fact that Bell is going to see a reduced workload at all. I think that kind of got worked up this offseason. Like they want to keep Bell healthy and kind of not split, but spell him at times with D'Angelo, and he might retain value. But I don't see that happening. I would sell D'Angelo to the Bell owner as hard as I could.
So what kind of return are you okay with getting in that sort of trade situation? Because I agree with you. I think that should be your number one option, is to try and shop him to the Bell owner and try and get as much as you can. And I think what I would want here is probably a flex starter, maybe like a low end RB2 if you're getting a running back. But I think someone that I'm very comfortable playing in the flex each week is what I would be looking for. And I don't think I would take anything less than that, to be honest.
No, you hold all the – if you have D'Angelo, you hold all the power. You can swing that any way you want. So I think, and every week flex starter isn't asking too much and it's not asking, too little. So it's definitely a fair price. And the worst case scenario, you hold on to D'Angelo, anything happens to Bell, you're right back where you started at the beginning of the season. You got a number one option at running back.
Yeah. Just for some names, I'm trying to think of some names of guys that would be, good to maybe target in a trade. If you're a D'Angelo owner who doesn't have Bell. What do you think about like Will Fuller?
Oh, that's selling him low, I think.
Okay.
Like Fuller's been good, but I don't even know. I just wouldn't like that very much. I was thinking more like in the Fitzgerald range.
Fitzgerald, okay. Yeah, okay. Fitzgerald, I think would be a solid one.
Again, this all depends on like what the situation is. It's going to be different for everybody, but yeah, we're looking at the players that you could possibly look for. So
yeah, I think Fitzgerald is an interesting one.
Trying to look at it.
I'm trying to think of like specifically who else.
What about like
maybe
any of the Bengals backs or like?
That's kind of what I was thinking about.
Yeah. Because they are every week starters. They're just not sexy.
I would probably do it for Gio. I don't know if I would do it for Jeremy. Jeremy Hill's like the worst person to own, and I own him, and I hate it. I might try and sell him this week, just after that 2 touchdowns, and see if anyone's stupid enough to buy.
You sound like me. You sound like me last year.
Yeah, it's like, oh, good. Jeremy Hill got a bunch of touchdowns. Let me get rid of him as fast as possible.
Hey, man, want Hill? No, get lost, dude. Fuck off.
That's the thing. If like anyone's even like mildly savvy in your league, they're gonna tell you just like to go screw off, But yeah. All right. So that's sort of the D'Angelo thing. Let's talk about the Colts pass game this week minus Moncrief. And, it's only a 1-game sample size, but I think it's like the best read that we're going to have into how they're going to use it. They used a lot of 2 tight ends. Dwayne Allen was on the field. Let me see. I have it here. Dwayne Allen was on the field for 82% of snaps. Jack Doyle was on the field for 76% of snaps. Their third wide receiver, Chester Rogers, only on the field for 43% of snaps. So their primary offensive set right now is 2 tight ends, which is important. Regarding the target distribution, Hilton coming in strong with 35% of the targets, Doyle coming in with 19%, Allen 16%, and then Dorsett down with 12%. That was 4 targets. That's not going to be usable if he's getting 12%, but we'll see if that continues. I think the questions here going forward are, is T.Y. Hilton becoming 2015 Julio? And then what do you do with the 2 tight ends?
Whoa, that's a ringing endorsement for T.Y. Hilton.
So I don't necessarily mean talent level or that sort of thing, but just like where he got over 200 targets. Like, is this just like,
oh yeah, I mean,
force feed the ball to Julio offense or force feed the ball to T.Y. offense?
Definitely. Until Moncrief comes back, it's definitely going to be the case. T.Y. went off, and it was against a very good corner, Jason Verrett, at times. So T.Y. Hilton is good. It's just they don't like the target spread was all over the place because they run 3 wide receiver a lot. So now that it's kind of dumbed down to that, we'll play 2 tight end, 2 guys on the outside. He's definitely going to see an uptick in targets, and I like that for any dude that has that talent level. So, yeah, I think T.Y. Hilton is going to be very good for the next coming weeks, especially that Moncrief is out. Can't say the same about Dorsett. He pretty much only excels in the slot, I believe, and not that good on the outside. So it's a little bit concerning. I'm starting to think Jack Doyle is a thing, and Allen is
Oh, dude,
droppable as fuck.
I'm 1000% in on the Jack Doyle thing.
Yep.
I don't. Jack Doyle's caught 86% of his targets this year. That's not sustainable. So like that's bound to regress. Dwayne Allen is, much more, I guess, at like a level already where it's pretty much normalized in terms of, his percentages, that sort of thing. But Jack Doyle, I think, is like the guy they want to use as the pass catcher. And they want him, like Dwayne Allen has always been an incredible run blocker. So I think Doyle might be like the primary pass catching tight end at this point. And I think I'd probably rather own him than Allen too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're virtually splitting snaps the entire time in the game, and they are looking Doyle's way over him. So I'm with you on that. I think if I have Dwayne Allen, I think that's pretty much over. You can go out to the waiver and pick somebody up, possibly Jack Doyle.
Yeah, that's yeah, I guess that is true. I think like if you're desperate, you could still play Allen, but I mean, it's not a sexy play by any means. You're sort of banking on the touchdown equity really working out for you.
Yep.
So let's talk about some weird stuff. Kelvin Benjamin, 0 catches on 1 target. This was a product of the Vikings defense, I would think, right?
I guess, but like, how can you throw it his way once?
So a lot of what I was reading is that the Vikings like basically took the approach of like, we're going to shut down Benjamin and let everyone else beat us.
And no one beat them.
Yeah, I mean, Olsen had 10 targets, but like that was about it. Cam played really poorly, and they weren't able to beat him. So it worked. Maybe other teams take that sort of thing and are like, well, screw it. Let's just shut down Benjamin. But I haven't been high on Benjamin to begin with. I thought he was a sell high after the first 2 weeks. But I mean, I would think this isn't, he's going to normalize somewhere in the middle here.
Yeah, definitely. This is just fucking crazy. It's just like I think I saw the same thing you saw with Captain Muller, whatever his last name is. It was just like, we're going to shut down Benjamin. We weren't concerned about Devin Funchess. He like called him out real hard.
Oh yeah, really big shot to Funchess.
Like,
I think his like words were like, "We don't think 17 is that good."
Yeah,
it's like, whoa, all right.
I don't say this, but 17 is not good.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think you're still keeping Benjamin. I would hope for an owner that this is an outlier game, and hopefully teams don't do this all the time because that would suck.
Yeah, no, for sure. Eric Decker, the streak is over, and that was the streak of 100 yards or a touchdown catch. He had like 1 catch for 36 yards or something like that, right? I don't remember.
Maybe yeah, it was a shit stat line, but that whole game was abysmal. But it's almost one of the like, how can you throw to Kelvin Benjamin once, and how can you throw 6 picks? It seems almost impossible for both.
There were a lot of really weird games this week, between this game, the Arizona Buffalo game, the Cincinnati Denver game was really weird. The Thursday night game between Houston and New England, that was really weird. I'd chalk this up to being weird and not worry about it going forward. The sample size we have on Decker is significant, and the sample size says he is a very good wide receiver who catches a lot of touchdowns.
Yes, absolutely.
Ryan Matthews is playing hurt. We don't really know all that much about it, but he didn't see a lot of work. Wendell Smallwood led the team in rushing. What do you do if you own Ryan Matthews?
Get rid of him as fast as possible. We're seeing, me and Walsh were both talking pre-podcast and both had different pickups of what's going on, because Walsh was saying that it's going to be a running back committee hard going forward no matter what. And then I saw that Ryan Matthews is going to be the lead back. But I guess if you figured that kind of coach lingo, that Ryan Matthews will just be the lead back in a committee. So I would get rid of him as fast as possible if anybody wants him, and I would not play him going forward.
Yeah, they like Sproles. They seem to like Smallwood. They have some weird obsession with getting Kenyon Barner the ball a couple times every game for some reason. It's just not a good situation, not something that's likely to be productive in terms of fantasy unless some injuries happen.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
Gronk used as a decoy, 22% of snaps. Marty B actually had a nice game. When are you comfortable using Gronk? When do we think he's not going to be a decoy?
I would guess this weekend. I don't think if I mean, I would have said the same thing last week. Gronk was active within like 15 minutes of game time. So, and he definitely screwed you. So that's a bummer. But if Gronk's healthy, I'm going to throw him out there. It's been an extended week since last Thursday. So hopefully he's got his shit together.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, keep a very close eye on what beat reporters are saying. But I would think he should be comfortable moving him out there. And then the last thing, we just kind of talked about it, but the Arizona Buffalo game was weird as hell, man. I mean, like LaShawn McCoy got those touchdowns. That's cool. He's an every week starter, no matter what for you. Carson Palmer threw the ball 50 times and had 5 fantasy points. What the hell? Like, whoa, just so frustrating. I think Michael Floyd also got a concussion in that game.
Yeah, he was in and out going through protocol. Like he went in, came back. He's like, my head still
And then all of a
hurts.
sudden,
John
John
Brown,
Brown,
yeah,
dude,
11 targets.
three targets through the first 2 weeks, and all of a sudden he gets 11 targets. Like, I don't know. Like, David Johnson is the only thing that I understand from that game. Are we just chalking this up as like a strange game, or are we trying to read further into it?
Man, I hope it was just a weird game. I think it was just a weird game, so I'm just going to keep all the Arizona players on that flat line where I kept them. They're still all what I think they are.
I agree. I very much agree. All right, dude. Let's talk briefly about the Miami at Cincinnati game for Thursday night before we get out of here. Cincinnati is currently a 7-point favorite. The over/under there is 45.5 points. What's your take on Cincinnati first, and who you should be playing in this game?
I think what I think every week. You're playing AJ Green regardless of matchup, but I do think that Gio and Hill could be good flex plays this week.
Yeah, I think they're both viable flex plays, and AJ Green is a no matter what start. You're dead on. On the Miami side, oh sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Tyler Eifert continues to log practice, but word is he will not play. It's going to be a game time decision. I think he could Gronk you if he is active, so be very careful with playing Eifert. If you've had him this long, I think you have another option at this point, so wait one more week even if he is active regardless.
Very much agreed. Miami side of the ball, we just saw them give up a bunch of points to Cleveland, but we also saw Tannehill have a decent game. Landry had a huge game, and then the running backs were gross, and Jay got a touchdown at the end. I think the only person I'm really, really looking to start on the Dolphins in this game is Jarvis Landry.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's usually the case. If you're feeling frisky, you can get in there with the Devontae Parker play, but I wouldn't advise it this week. If you're thinking that Tannehill is a good play since Trevor Siemian just ripped the Bengals a new asshole, please don't do that. What the Bengals did was play up front and make Siemian throw deep, and then he fucking did, and that really backfired. So
yeah, that made me so mad, dude. I was like,
that was awful, dude. I was furious, and the whole bunch of miscues and just it was just not a good game, and they just got really fucked up by the Broncos.
Oh man, that game was terrible. But anyway, yeah, like you said, you can take a flyer on Parker or Stills. I don't think it's necessary, and Landry is the play. Don't start any of the running backs. I know Ajayi got a touchdown. Don't start him.
No, please no.
You got anything else on this game, or just the recap in general?
One thing about Landry, he's been like in and out of practice with a shoulder injury. They're not saying too much, but just keep an eye on that up till game time.
I did not know that, so thank you for bringing that up.
No problem.
Yeah. So I guess with that being said, that was the week 3 recap. So if you guys have any questions this week, don't hesitate to tweet at us, email us, whatever you got to do, get those questions to us. They may not be answered within the first hour or so, but they will be answered throughout the week. So just keep doing that. Thank you guys again for listening, and I think that's about it. So later podcast.